Good morning and welcome to our webinar, The New Era of the Cruise Industry After COVID-19. The cruise industry has the attention of many, and especially us living on the Caribbean island, destinations where tourism is an important pillar in our economy. This morning, we have interesting discussion with some of the captains in the cruise industry. So I don't want to take much more time of you. Just to inform you, we have Noticias Panama broadcasting this webinar live. Thank you for being here with us. So without further ado, I will leave the floor open to our moderator, Mr. Hernan Ayala, Past President of Shipping Association of Puerto Rico. Hernan.
Thank you, Milaika. It is an honor for me to be being the moderator this morning with such an excellent panel. And we're very glad to be here. We already have over 40 participants joining in, and I think more people are going to continue joining. So we welcome everybody from the CSA membership today to this wonderful panel. And now I will leave our president, Juan Carlos Croston, to say our welcome words.
Good morning to all of you, and thank you for joining this, and thank you to the organizations joining the Caribbean Shipping Association in making this event possible, the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association, FCCA, the Cruise Lines International Association, CLIA, for Colombia, and the Puerto Rico Tourism Company. It is very difficult to understate the importance of a sector that represents almost $3.4 billion in direct expenditure in the Caribbean region, almost 16% of GDP, and 15% of jobs. Clearly, our Caribbean region is very dependent on tourism. That includes cruise tourism and the cruise line expenditures. So the objective of this webinar, of course, is to discuss what the new normal will look like and how a region can adjust to this new reality. And that includes safety and safety protocols from port and terminals, cruise passengers, crew members, and local communities at its destination. And we cannot leave aside the psychological aspects of each of these players. We have the technical part, but also we should work on making sure that people feel that it's safe to return to the normal practices. Also, we have to work on coordination between cruise lines and the destination. And this includes also repatriation and crew changes. We have seen news on this issue, how it's impacting crew members, and we must make sure that the cruise industry is sustainable for all the stakeholders. So without further ado, welcome, and we turn it over to Hernan again.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just going to go from a few details of how this is going to work today. We're going to have three presenters. We're going to have a presentation from Mr. Brian Salerno, the Senior Vice President for Maritime Policy at CLIA. We're also going to have a presentation from Nathan Dondas, our General Manager for Bryson Shipping. And we're going to have a presentation by Alejandro Caicedo Bennett, Chief Development Officer of Puerto Rico Tourism Company. I would like to formally excuse Mr. Gilberto Salcedo, Vice President of Tourism at ProColombia. He had to cancel on Monday because he has a meeting with the President of Colombia, and of course that's most important for him. But we're going to give him the opportunity on a future webinar or activity of the CSA for him to participate. And I also would like to give a special welcome to Michelle Page and Adam Cesareno from the FCCA, which will also be at hand to answer questions at the end of the presentations. So during the presentation, we're also going to be having three polls, one after each presentation, where we're going to give the audience 10 seconds to submit their answers, and we will project the results immediately on different questions related to our topics for today's discussion, which of course is how are we going to be able to resume operations in the cruise ship industry after everything that's happened with the COVID-19. So without any further delay, I will pass the mic over to Brian Salerno. Welcome, Brian, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Hernan, and good morning to everybody on the call. I'm going to pull up a presentation. to help us walk through this. Can everybody see that? I just want to get it to where it is showing the full screen. There we go.
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, great. Well, good. Hello again. Very happy to be here with all of you to discuss resumption of operations, share a little bit about the current state of the cruise industry and the path ahead, looking forward to resumption of activity, which I know is on everybody's mind. You know, it's been just over 3 months since the cruise industry voluntarily suspended its embarkations from the US, which of course had direct effects on the Caribbean basin. Our voluntary suspension was originally set for 30 days. And as we all know, when our suspension was getting close to the 30-day mark, the Center for Disease Control, CDC, issued a revised no-sail order prohibiting embarkations on any vessel with a capacity over 250 persons. So this brought all of our ocean cruises within the meaning of the CDC's order. You know, previously they had exempted us because of our voluntary suspension, but now we were included in that. Their order was issued in mid-April with a duration of 100 days. And so that will now expire on July 24th. Even with the suspension of operations, there was still a number of cruises at sea. And it took some time for all of them to return to port and to discharge their passengers. There were several round the world cruises, and these obviously took the longest. But very rapidly, it became increasingly difficult to get people home as travel restrictions were imposed and borders were shut down. It ultimately took several weeks to get all passengers repatriated and even longer for crew. In fact, the industry is still, even today, working hard to repatriate excess crew members. From the US, this has required the use of charter aircraft. Also, a number of other countries have required the same thing. No commercial transportation has been allowed, although that might start to change, we hope, under tightly controlled conditions based on some recent guidance. A number of vessels, cruise lines, out of sheer frustration, have had to use their own ships to repatriate crews to such far-off places as India and the Philippines, as other means of repatriating them have been closed off. Now, the crew that remain on board are being well cared for. There's food, there's medical care, but their onboard activities, such as the use of gyms and the ability to socialize, are very closely restricted by health authorities, even when there's no illness on board and after they've been on board for several incubation cycles of the virus. This is creating a lot of psychological stress, which quite honestly is very alarming. We've even, I'm sad to say, had a number of suicides on cruise ships by crew members who have been locked down, which just is a very painful indicator of the mental toll that this experience is having on crews. And just to underscore the crew issue, CLIA has been working with the International Chamber of Shipping, with the IMO, with the International Labor Organization on crew issues. The barriers are listed on the right-hand side. These are not unique to the cruise industry. It's affecting shipping and seafarers in all of the maritime trades. And IMO has been, thankfully, very vocal on this and is applying pressure where it can to help alleviate the ongoing problem. And here you see the Secretary General's statement within the last week urging governments to do more. I guess it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, this shutdown has hit us hard economically. Right now, we are an industry without the ability to generate income, but of course we have very significant ongoing expenses. This not only affects us directly, but also affects thousands of service providers who support our industry and who depend upon tourism for their livelihoods. On a global basis, our analysts have estimated that every day we're shut down costs about 2,500 jobs. either directly through layoffs within the industry or indirectly with those who depend on our industry. So the clear imperative for all of us is to resume as soon as it's safe to do so. For a bit of positive news, we've done some surveys and found that we have a very loyal following among people who have cruised, and still very strong desire to take cruises by those who haven't yet cruised. So this is very positive, and it shows that the industry is poised to rebound, once it's safe to do so. And I think it's no surprise to anybody on this call that of all the locations in the world where we operate, the Caribbean is #1 by far. So as for what resumption looks like and for when it occurs, we don't have definitive answers yet. It's still evolving. Cruising will most certainly take what's been learned from epidemiologists and public health officials and build in some very noticeable changes to the cruise experience, but all designed to prevent the introduction of a virus on the cruise ship. And should somebody develop symptoms while on board, to have a far superior means of isolating and caring for them so that the virus does not spread to others. The cruise lines are deep into this kind of planning, and they're evaluating new technologies, new procedures that will help preserve a sanitized environment on board. CLIA is working with all of its members, and at some point in the not too distant future, we anticipate an industry-wide plan that will form the basis of meaningful dialogue with regional and national public health officials. And that would include, of course, the CDC within the US, but also CARPA within the Caribbean, among others. The industry is, however, not yet ready to announce its, the specific measures. The reason for this really relates to what I mentioned earlier about the knowledge of the virus continually changing. For example, if we had announced specifics of what we were thinking a month ago, we would already have to modify that based on what we've learned since then. And the same may be true for a month from now. But what the industry does plan to do is to rely on the best procedures available at the time we are ready to resume. Now, unlike other travel and hospitality industries, which are continuing to operate, hotels operate, airlines are operating, they need solutions today. They need to put measures in effect right now. But we're shut down, and as a result of that, we have a bit more time to get this right. But even so, there are a few things that we can say at this time. For example, we believe that cruising will not resume globally, just by turning on a switch and everything starting all at once. It's more likely to resume in a phased manner. It'll start first in areas where the virus has receded. It will take a bit longer in places where the virus is still very active. So it's going to be gradual and it's going to be phased. Nor do we expect that when cruising does resume that it will just pick up right where it left off in terms of itineraries. We may see some very limited itineraries at first, and these would be very well coordinated between cruise lines and destination ports. But the big question is when? When will we see a return in the Caribbean? And this, in large measure, hinges on the opening of Florida ports. And to be honest, I don't see that happening in the near future. The current CDC order expires on the 24th of July. I can't tell you what occurs, after that date. So what will passengers experience as when we do finally resume? Well, certainly they'll experience numerous checks and what we're terming a kind of a door-to-door approach. This would begin at booking, some questions and surveys that they would answer, checklists. We continue through screening and embarkation. There'll be changes in the onboard precautions, such as how buffets are managed. Also special precautions for shore excursions, where they occur. And then ultimately disembarkation and contact tracing even after they return home. And all of this presumes, some form of enhanced screening, at embarkation, not only for passengers, but also for crew, and also for any shoreside service providers who visit the ship as part of their duties. It would certainly involve changes in onboard procedures, such as, appropriate distancing, surveillance to detect anyone who may be exhibiting symptoms, and then also the ability to test for COVID, in addition to enhancing the medical staff to deal with any problems that do emerge. We're also very aware that, not every port throughout the Caribbean or other ports around the world has the same capability to deal with intensive care patients. So we not only envision adding capability on the ship itself, but also providing the means to evacuate a patient to a suitable medical facility if their condition exceeds the onboard capabilities. And of course, there'll also be enhanced training for the crew, not only those who interact directly with passengers, but all crew, because maintaining their health is really fundamental to having a healthy ship. Destinations throughout the Caribbean and elsewhere in the world will have a lot to say about this as well. The cruise lines know that a lot of advanced work will need to be done before we see anything like normal operations. For one thing, there will need to be agreement on the sufficiency of the measures put in place on board cruise ships, so that when an illness is reported to local health authorities, it doesn't trigger an automatic denial of entry or quarantine of an entire vessel. This, as we saw very early in the pandemic, has cascading effects. Once one port denies entry, the next port, begins to feel a lot of public pressure to follow suit. And then very quickly, the industry is really unable to operate as intended. So we need to get to a point where, local officials are confident that an isolated illness or very limited number of illnesses does not pose an extreme risk. And that reaching that point, of course, is going to factor, into how quickly normal itineraries can resume. Shore excursions are another area of where coordination is truly needed. This is meant to protect equally, the passengers on the ship, but also the local citizens in the ports that are being visited. The lines will most likely to look for some assurance that the shore excursion providers are following local health requirements, including sanitizing procedures. Group sizes may also be limited to provide for social distancing, tours may be staggered, and personal protective equipment may be required depending on local requirements and the nature of the excursion. This same thinking extends to regular port services, anywhere the ship and shore come into contact. So pilots, official visitors, bunkering services, anyone bringing provisions and stores, on board a ship, they may all require some advanced coordination regarding onboard protocols to ensure that interactions are mutually protective. Well, so that's a snapshot of where we are, and admittedly a bit of a fuzzy look ahead, but that's the best that we have at the moment. So I'm going to stop there, and I'll look forward to your questions when we get to the Q&A period. So back to you, Malaka. Or not?
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you very much. The question and answer will be at the end of the presentations. And just for your knowledge, there's a section on Zoom that has Q&A. When we reach that point, you can send your question with the panelists you're asking the question to, and we'll take it from there, and they'll be able to answer the questions at the end of the presentations. Now I would like to welcome Mr. Nathan Dundas as our next presenter from the beautiful island of Antigua. Welcome, Nathan. You're ahead. Go ahead.
Hernan, before we continue with Nathan, I would like to do the first poll so the people can vote, okay?
Sorry, I forgot. Thank you. Go ahead.
Just 2 more seconds and we will stop the polling, okay? This is the result. And we can continue then with Nathan.
Thank you, Malaika. Thank you, Hernan. Thank you, Brian. It's my pleasure and privilege, ladies and gentlemen, to speak from the Caribbean perspective. Really appreciated hearing from Brian with regard to the cruise lines perspective, but I'd like to bring it home to the Caribbean. When I think of COVID-19, I think of adaptability. Adaptability. I would show my first slide as to what it means for us. I can't see the screen, so I'm hoping that you see it. But it looks, that is how far we have come when it comes to adapting. Many companies and businesses around the world have seen the need to adapt to survive. And we've seen adaptations and adjustments being done by the airlines, hotels, Airbnbs, B&Bs, restaurant, bars, you name it. Similarly, there's a need for us to adapt to the changes that the new cruise tourism product is going to bring. It is not going to be business as usual. I would like to refer to it as the new cruise normal, the NCN. Each destination, each supplier, each service provider have to look at making adaptation. A good example for this is a distillery company in the Caribbean produced as much as 151% proof rum that the tourists loved in their rum punches. Tasted so good that after they drank it, people can't even remember how good it was. Because of COVID-19, they started making hand sanitizers, some of the best hand sanitizers in the Caribbean right now. The whole idea is that they adapted. We now have NCN. So how do we go about achieving that adaptation to this new normal? How do we accomplish it? By means of protocols and guidelines. No doubt you've been hearing the term protocols over and over again. And there seems to be a protocol for everything, protocols between all the governments and corporations, and even in space now, we're seeing protocols for satellite crews. We can even make a protocol for what to do if a person falls asleep during my presentation now. But I like the definition in one dictionary of a protocol as simply two or more parties coming together to reach an understanding or agreement on some matter. So going forward, that is what we are going to need: clear and defined protocols. The government authorities, headed by, of course, the Ministry of Health, will be setting up guidelines, and they have set up some guidelines in most of the destinations, or in all. The cruise lines, as Brian brought out clearly, will also set up guidelines and protocols for us. The same will also apply and can happen when we think of arrangements that are going to be made, for instance, with our tour operators and attraction sites. The amount of passengers to be carried, let's say, on a tour or a catamaran, the monitoring or usage of alcoholic beverages, the crowding at buffet lines, the utensils to be used, the security lines at the various embarkation entrances, the amount of persons to be allowed in stores, how will it work for the vendors and visitors in cramped areas? All of the stakeholders, service providers in all those areas can use the time now to start planning. There's going to be need for some form of sharing information and commonality. We had situations during the past months where some destinations were accepting the same ships that other destinations were rejecting. They had their reasons. We had situations where some destinations weren't even accepting the maritime health declarations as legitimate from the ships. They too had their reasons. We had situations where ship captains were expressing that they wouldn't be happy to return to some destinations because of how they felt that they were treated. They had their reasons. So this is not what we need going forward. But that is what the fear and anxiety of COVID-19 caused. We should be at a stage, therefore, going forward in preparation, where a ship will know, based on the protocols, that they'll be either allowed at a destination or they will not be allowed. We should similarly be at a stage where, based on the protocols and guidelines, that a government can say we're going to accept a ship or not accept a ship. You see, it is not in the best interest of us all that a ship captain will be outside of a destination with thousands of passengers on board a ship, not knowing if the authorities would accept them or reject them. So clear and defined protocols would address this so that it's understood. From the inception of COVID-19, when the destinations are accepting and refusing vessels, some of us have been calling for a meeting of the minds of our health authorities and private and public sectors across the Caribbean. We in the Caribbean were fortunate to a point that COVID impact was felt close to the end of the winter season. So we are thankful for that. We did lose in the Caribbean as much as 60 to 100 calls in some locations and less in some cases. But we are thankful, especially when we compare ourselves to destinations like Alaska. As we know, their season is generally between May to September. They will literally have no cruise business for a whole year, no income whatsoever. So we're thankful. But what was instructive was what we saw was the need for clear protocols and guidelines. We're emphasizing that we were stressing during those months if a ship was going to be allowed to come into the docks, to the destination. We were stressing if the passengers would be allowed to come off. We were stressing if anyone ill would be allowed to see a doctor or go to a hospital. We were stressing if our population would be affected, and we can go on and on. We were having discussions with colleagues across the region as we tried to find out what were the different protocols each other had to deal with in the various areas of the cruise sector. So I would like to applaud the governments that saw the need to put the protocols in place and say thanks. We, however, need to put in place strategic vulnerability plans for the upcoming season and beyond with this new protocol, with this new crisis that we have. And I implore our governments to involve the private sector stakeholders in those discussions. There's a former Minister of Tourism who is listening on this Zoom right now, who always like to say, the biggest ship is not the Oasis of the Seas or the Symphony of the Seas. The biggest ship is partnership. The biggest room is the room for improvement. And so, yes, there may be areas that the government will miss that the stakeholders can pinpoint to a mutual benefit, to improvement, to partnership. At this present moment, there are some destinations that differ significantly with regards to the protocols. For instance, regarding disembarkation guidelines to be followed, or they may not be as clear as they should be. We want to encourage collaboration. If it is being done partially now, we encourage, we implore, do it more, do it more. It's only by coming together and coming up with common protocols and guidelines that we can successfully try to deal with this. A wise man said, where there is no skillful direction, the people perish, but there is success through many advisors. We would be surprised at the ideas and suggestions that can be offered by the stakeholders in all our different countries who deals with our visitors on a daily basis. In one service company in the Caribbean, they made all the arrangements for social distancing, painted 6 feet distancing standing positions, put out hand sanitizers, all the works. The managers did a great job, but the receptionist told her manager she needed a plexiglass screen protector. You see, with all the plans that they were making, this was the person who was interacting the most with the public, and for some reason, she was missed in the whole planning process. There is a need for us to also apply the protocols, not just in paper, but in reality. Let me relate some situations that took place within the last few weeks, right here in the Caribbean. In one destination recently, just to repatriate one crew, even though there was a protocol The health department referred the request for approval to the port. Then the port said, no, it's health. Back and forth. It should be clear and applied as agreed. There was another situation where just trying to get one crew repatriated. It took 2 days to get that one crew off to the airport because a port manager had his own separate method of operation as to what the health authorities had put out. It caused the line to pay additional change fees twice to the airline, and as well as accommodation fees and so forth. In another destination, the port agent had to take the passports and physically hand them to the immigration officers because the officers didn't want to accept them from the crew members. The flight got off, the crew went home, but the crew left feeling that they were being scorned by the destination. In another destination, and this was a good one, the quarantining of crews, of hundreds of crew on a cruise ship right here in the Caribbean went so well with the involvement of health officials and private sector that a cruise line was so impressed, they said it was like a movie production. So the whole idea is some destinations have it right, some destinations need to get it right as we plan to prepare for this new crisis that we have. We need to apply what's agreed upon, and we can get it right. A former High Court judge who is sitting in this Zoom meeting right now today always used to tell me after we discuss some event, he would say, learn from it, learn from it. And so we want to learn from each other if we have to do that in that case. So as we take small steps to recovery in this new cruise tourism normal, NCN, it is important to get everyone involved, not just the executives and the officials. The message must filter down to every employee, especially those at ground zero. They have to see their importance in the big picture. It's like the man I saw on TV working at the General Motors plant, proudly during the COVID-19 as they adapted from making cars and vehicles to making respirators. His job was just to put a tiny screw in the respirator. But he knew that if that screw wasn't put in correctly, if a little bit of oxygen got away from that ventilator, it could mean the difference between life and death. So as we seek to welcome back the visitors to our islands, every service provider have an important part to make that visitor experience, especially under these circumstances, the best one. A fundamental fact that we're seeing from all of the protests that is taking place around the world right now is this: people will be motivated for change when they are enlightened and they see the difference that they can make. And I repeat again, people will be motivated for change or adapting or adjusting when they are enlightened and they can see the difference that they can make. The fact is, friends, we have no idea how long or we have to live with this COVID, or if it will return, or how it will return, or what else is there to come. But we know business have to continue in some shape or form. We just can't give up. And so our desire should be to make sure we do it in a safe and workable environment as possible. Protocols will help. Guidelines will help. I repeat again, protocols will help. Guidelines will help. So now we've reached a stage we understand the need for protocols. We have all the protocols. We are going to make adjustments and put protocols in place. We need a product. We need the cruise ships back. And from what Brian is saying, and we understand from CLIA and the cruise lines, they are making plans to come back to our shores. So it would be remiss of me not to mention my delight to see the collaboration that is taking place between the Caribbean Shipping Association, CSA, FCCA, and CLIA, and even CARICOM. It may have taken COVID to bring us together, so be it. We need this type of team effort as we face this new NCN Caribbean. We need it. Caribbean countries on a whole with limited resources will need the cooperation and team effort of all its partners to face this pandemic and whatever else is there to come. So, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, look at this cruise industry. Look at the effect it has had on the thousands of lives of people across the Caribbean. The cruise industry has become the livelihood of thousands of people across the Caribbean. Let's embrace the NCN. There's an inspiring song that is sung in different cultures of the world, but in the Caribbean, we love hearing it from our girl, Karine Ashe. Her chorus is, "Quitters never win, winners never quit." Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Very uplifting presentation. Thank you very much. Very inspiring. But we'll continue now with the poll from Milaika. Milaika. There it is. We're just waiting for the results of the poll to come in, and we'll continue with the presentations. Thank you, Milaika. We're good. Well, thank you for the poll. That's very interesting what we're getting from these polls, and then we'll be sharing with them with you at the end of the webinar. Also, we'll be sharing also the presentations from each one of our presenters. Now we'll continue with Mr. Alejandro Caicedo from the Puerto Rico Tourist Administration. Thank you, Alejandro, for being here with us.
Thank you, Nan. Thank you, Meleka, and all the executives of CSA for having me here, for giving me the ability to give out a brief presentation. I'll just quickly share my screen so you could be able to see the presentation. So I'll just talk quickly about the tourism industry, also what is being done to implement the different protocols, as Brian said earlier. So where is Puerto Rico at this moment? We're open for domestic tourism. In July, will be our opening date for all travelers. Wait a second now. So today, the destination's popular attractions are open for the island's residents, that being parks, beaches. This can enjoy the beauty and hospitality of the travel industry with certain restrictions that we have established, and which further on I will discuss. Hotels around Puerto Rico have remained open throughout the pandemic. And with recent updates, common and commercial spaces such as pools, bars, restaurants, and shops within the hotels are able to operate within those certain restrictions, including a 50% capacity, and also at the same time safeguarding and promoting the social distancing. Tourist attractions and popular sites are also open during this phase. Tour operators and businesses that rent equipment used for the activities and operations of such are also authorized to resume operations. So when the pandemic started hitting our region and started significantly affecting Puerto Rico, we came up with phase recovery strategies similar to other regions, but this includes 5 phases. So between March and May, what we were focused on was on the containment of the pandemic. So in this stage, our focus was safeguarding the wellness and security of all residents and visitors, while providing aid to the tourism work for businesses, which I'll later on discuss which aids was provided to the different businesses and to the industry as general. Second phase was preparing for the reopening. This was between May and June. That's when we were sitting down and coming up with a strategy to prepare for that opening phase. So right now, as of yesterday, we started with this reopening stage of the industry. This is at the same time considering how the numbers in terms of new cases are coming along. And if we have to make any adjustments to the different phases of recovery strategy, we're doing so. This is in coordination with the CDC and Health Department here locally in Puerto Rico. So now we're looking at the next phase, ramping up in fall. What does this entail? This will be driving up short-term tourism businesses to reinstate the cruise industry. How we're doing that, what are the new implementations and protocols to be reestablished. I will also go in another slide and talk more in depth about it. But we saw that many of those efforts Brian already talked about in terms of what is expected for the cruise line industry as a destination. We already have certain protocols that have been very effective in our airport. So we'll continue to drive those, take those, I would say, new security and health protocols that have been very effective in the airport and apply them also to the ports, and how can we learn from those. So after that ramp up, we have our last stage of recovery. Those two stages could have changes. Just like Brian said, there's still a lot of question marks in regards of how is the virus reacted, or what's the new news of the virus and how we have to adjust to those. So the ramp up stage and recovery stage could see changes considering new advancement on the virus. So, as I said earlier, there were several programs that were developed by different agencies to support the businesses locally. We were able to take advantage of the CARES Act when we received federal funding to support the different businesses and also provide financial aid to the employees, also provide different financial business support so operations could keep running, provide liquidity to those that need it. So we also have local funding to help out those in terms of the tourism sector, would it be tour operators and others. Additionally, we came up also with COVID-19 Tourism Information Hub, which provides all the relevant information regarding the COVID-19 locally. Also, we came up with a health and safety seal program. This was created to safeguard and achieve the highest measures of hygiene and cleanliness across all the sectors. In order to keep the sector informed, we also provided what we call the industry pulse, or a biweekly online data collection, so the businesses could be constantly informed of what are additional financial aids that are being provided and how can they take advantage of those. Also, we have what is called the Certified Tourism Ambassador Program. This is a program developed for all tourism employees and volunteers that, considering what Nathan discussed of the new normal, we believe that we have to empower those employees and volunteers to, at the same time, start molding themselves to this new normal, considering all the protocols in place, but at the same time providing the experience offering of the destination. So this is very key for us. How can we empower every employee, every business related to the tourism sectors, be the cruise line, tour operators, and all the service providers and suppliers of the cruise industry, that they could feel comfortable in providing great services and at the same time providing an amazing experience here locally. And lastly, we have the Tourism Executive Certification Program. This is an online education program to enhance those skills in the businesses and over the tourism management. This will also help out in providing that amazing experience for every passenger that comes into Puerto Rico. So this is one of the programs that we are providing and building to prepare ourselves once the cruise industry comes back again. A lot of businesses in Puerto Rico depend on them. As Nathan said, we already have over 150 call cancellations, over $50 million in impact, and that's not considering suppliers into the equation. So we have to prepare ourselves to support the industry and come up with unique ways, given this is a unique situation we're in, to empower the cruise lines, also other destinations or businesses, and reopen once again the industry. So, as you said, we're facing this new area for the cruise industry, and what to expect after COVID-19. I know that Brian and Nathan were very vocal on this. Also, that as a destination, we see that our focus is providing a healthier and safer environment for everybody coming in, passenger as well as local businesses and employees from the different, would be public agencies or the private sector, working as one to achieve this. So between May 4th and June 1st, we rolled out the health and safety program. And already we have many officials from the Puerto Rico Tourism Company doing inspections and certifications process to secure those new standards we have established for the industry. So that's ongoing. We have had substantial progress in this. Many of the hotels are adhering to this standards. So that's amazing news. And we're preparing for when we open for national and international markets. So at the same, we were one of the first that in the U.S. to have a lockout, which started in March 15th. And this has enabled us to maintain a relatively low, at least one of the lowest infection rates in the U.S. and also in the region. So being proactive in all of this has helped us be more prepared for what we expect that the new norm will be. So currently, We only have one airport open. All the regional airports are closed. At the moment, we have always maintained several domestic flights from key destinations or key hubs in the US, and also services to other areas. But we have funneled all the flights through the international airport Luis Muñoz Marin. At the moment, lowest point we have around between 1,000 and 1,500 passengers. Currently, we're looking at between 3,000 and 4,000 passengers coming in through the international airport. We only have 2 terminals open. Everybody that's coming in, they're provided with a complimentary testing, rapid test. So at the moment, in conjunction with Aerostar's Port Authority, also the National Guard who is providing these services, and the CDC and Health Department, we have come up with a very strategic logistic implementation in the airport, which has helped us also not only safeguard or contain the situation, but also provide some sort of comfort for those passengers coming in that feel that things are being done in a proper manner. So at the moment, and as I mentioned earlier, yesterday we started with the new executive order. So we still have a lockdown between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. Restaurants are able to operate with a 50% dining room capacity, and provide full service takeout and delivery. Also, the beaches, reserve parks, golf courses, and other recreational facilities are open. Nevertheless, they're open only for recreational use. There cannot be big gatherings of groups. They also have to maintain the health and safety guidelines that were established and which are in the executive order. And certain other outdoor athletic activities, which do not have physical contact, can be carried out. So I appreciate the time, everyone, and I know it's a difficult situation we are in. Nevertheless, we continue to support greatly the industry. I know it's going to take a lot from everyone. And once again, like Nathan said, the public-private sector, I know it's a lot of moving parts. We have to come together so we can reopen in a safe and proper manner to safeguard the health and safety of everyone that is involved in this. So once again, I appreciate it. Mileika, thank you. Hernan, thank you. And all the executives from the CSA, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alejandro. Very well thought out presentation. We have one more poll before we go to a question and answer. So I'll leave Mileika with the poll. Thank you. There you go. Oh, Mileika, can you post the answer, the poll again? It was too quick. There we go. Looks promising as well. Everybody's looking for November. Very well. But we're going to continue, and I would like to give an opportunity to our special guests, Michelle and Adam, if you want to make some comments and contribute to our presentations today.
Greetings. This is Michelle Page. I'm honored to be with you. And on behalf of the member lines of the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association, we wish you all well. We know these are very trying times, and I want you to have the philosophy that this is a restart. This gives us an opportunity to look at what we can do better. For, as you all know, for many, many years, we've looked at the Caribbean, Central America, as the epitome of what destinations need to be. But we've also been saying that we need to look internal, to be able to what we should showcase to the world, what we need to do, because people want to really experience the destinations. So this is the opportunity to work hard, as we all have some time on our hands. Instead of looking negatively, look positively, because things are going to be better than ever. I believe that, instead of looking at the summer as a downtime, that if we really do the diligence to be able to recognize that the Caribbean has it all, why shouldn't ships stay in the Caribbean year round? Why shouldn't ships stay longer in port? Do multi-day destination experiences. This is the opportunity. Let's use this as a restart. And I want to also underline the strong relationship between Cruise Lines International Association and the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association. We work hand in hand. We couldn't do it without each other, but we also recognize that this is the opportunity to work together. As Nathan said, it's important for the destinations to be able to align, that the ministries of health, the ministries of tourism are all working hand in hand with the private sector. It's extremely important that for us as guests in your country to be given the full picture for when we put you on an itinerary. It's extremely important. It's a relationship, but it's also a commitment. So I look forward to working with you all, because this is a restart. I know that together we will be stronger than ever. I know that the cruise industry is resilient. I know that the Caribbean is the place that if we look at this as an opportunity, we will be able to rebound. Remember, life isn't how you do with the storm. It's about learning how to dance in the rain. So the Caribbean has been historically used to hurricanes. So let's all learn how to dance in the rain. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much. Well, we'll continue with our, or Adam, sorry, you want to say something, a few words?
No, I just want to second what Michelle's saying. I mean, with this great crisis that's been put upon us, there's amazing opportunities. And a lot of times when destinations reached out to the cruise lines about something new regarding itineraries or staying overnight or something that would kind of fell out of the scope of what we typically did, it was very hard to make a change because the revenue models were already set. The ship was deployed. It was going to be there for 2 to 3 years. They already did their budgets. There was a lot of things that were really set on what what they were planning. And I absolutely agree with Michelle. I think that, listen, it's a total restart. There is no excuse of why we can't come up with different itineraries and multiple port stays in single destinations and bring back the older cruising model of staying overnight in destinations. I think there's going to be a big demand for that. One, because you have your hotel, which is the ship, in a destination sitting there, and you can spend more time and you don't have to be rushed as so. The other thing is, I think it's going to be more communication than ever with the cruise lines, the FCCA, with Cruise Lines International, and all of the destinations, not just the Caribbean. We need to share on ideas that work in different destinations regarding these policies and procedures, not just regarding COVID, because after COVID, there's going to be something else. there's always going to be something else that comes up because it's just the nature of the beast. And the industry has always been in the forefront of not only meeting but exceeding policies when it comes to health. This was a voluntary stay by the industry because everything was happening so fast globally around the world, and it was too fluid of a situation to keep up with. So, first and foremost, the health and safety of passengers, crew, and also the destinations that we go to came first. But with this restart that will be coming, we can look at a whole different model of how we all work together in regarding every policy. One of the biggest things that's coming up right now that we're still working on, and CLIA has been dealing with it and with FCCA, is repatriation of crew. Many of these the cruise lines want to get back to their country. It's just a matter of, I guess, fear of getting, of allowing these people to come back into their home country. And no matter what you read in the news, it's not the cruise lines. We want to get people back. We spent enormous amounts of money getting people back, but there's just a little bit of fear out there of bringing some of these people back. But together, I think we'll be a stronger industry. And what the FCCA is going to be focusing on is not just cruise tourism, but overall tourism in many of our strategic marketing plans and programs that we're coming up with now. We haven't been just sitting here, on our hands. We've been developing programs for all the destinations and partners to partner with the FCCA, but we want to get away from just, trying to be you talk to the FCCA about just cruise. There's always a model that, there's cruise and there's stay over, and then the FCCA can help with our programs for both. So we want to drive using the travel agents to impact destinations as fast and economically impactful as possible through the new programs that we're going to be having. But it's a pleasure to be on the webinar. And Michelle's always had a strong relationship in FCCA with all associations. So, it's a pleasure to be here.
If I could just add one more thing, and I'm shocked, Adam and Alejandro, I left you the window open and you did not come through. The FCCA conference this year is full steam ahead for San Juan, Puerto Rico, October 19th to the 22nd. We're the last man standing for conferences. Even our partner, the Sea Trade Organization, had to cancel their 2 conferences for this year. They're going to be part of our conference. So that means that our conference, even though we always felt it was the most important conference that you could ever attend, it's that much more important this year because it's going to bring together everyone to be able to restart and re-energize and come up with a plan of how to be better than before. So please mark your calendars. San Juan, Puerto Rico, October 19th to the 22nd. We are there to help you. And if you need anything, call me directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. We're looking forward to see you here in Puerto Rico. I'm wearing your shirt from your last conference, by the way.
Oh, good. Thank you. That means that it does last, right?
Oh, they're great. They're great. Well, thank you very much to all the participants. This has been a great panel, and we're going to go right ahead into the questions. We have already a few questions, and the first one is for Alejandro, and it comes from Dino Dal. What type of measurements instruments like PRC or any other do you use to complement the COVID-19 rapid testing in Puerto Rico? Alejandro. Just gotta get the mic on.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So once you come into the airport, you get a rapid test, and afterwards, depending on the results, so you get the molecular, and then you get the serológica. I don't know if...
Serologic test.
serologic tests. They're complementary. Obviously, nobody can be forced to take them. Nevertheless, we highly request that everybody that's coming in has a test. So we have those two phases. We have those two options. You can go directly and have the serologic test. Both those are the two testings that we have in place at the airport at the moment.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. The next question comes from Tom Burlington. Talking about is very important and knowledge sharing will add value to all participants, but how are we as an industry making sure that comparable protocols are being followed by the different Caribbean cruise destinations and that government do not surpass international regulations like the IMO? And the question is the CSA taking a lead, and will there be an attempt to get governments together to make it easier for the cruise and cargo lines to call different destinations? And I guess I'm going to send that one to Nathan.
Yes, thanks, Hernan. The CSA has a part to play, a role to play in this whole arrangement, but we have to do it with partners. And I guess that's one of the reasons why this webinar is on right now, to ensure that we can get our other partners as part of this whole group to try to do that. And of course, yes, we will be making advances along with the FCCA, to play a role in this as well, so that we can try to get collaboration. Collaboration is important. There's some destinations that are doing this pretty well, and then there's some destinations that are lagging behind. And if we can get, the sharing of information and collaboration in place, yes, I think that's the best way for us to go.
Thank you, Nathan. From Balik Gomez for Adam Cesareno, how can we create the space for more flexibility during cruises?
Or flexibility during cruises? I'm not sure if I understand that question.
Well, let me just reply to the person that answered, and we'll get back to her.
Yeah.
From Don Backwitz, is it possible to create a Caribbean-wide cruise safety certification covering all spectrums of cruise passenger service? And he says, my compliment to Puerto Rico. However, a wider approach can have a broader impact. And I'll leave that one open to all the panelists.
This is Brian. It might be helpful to understand a little bit more about what's behind the question. Are we talking about cruise safety certification for the tourist experience, shore excursions, or is it limited to the ships, or just coordination between the islands?
I'm pretty sure it's probably talking about protocols and safety precautions, among the cruise lines. And let me type back to the person that answered to be more specific.
Yeah, I'll say from a cruise line perspective, and I don't know, Michelle or Adam may have additional thoughts on this. I think we will reach a point where the cruise lines have a common set of protocols that they will follow. They're already working on developing this. That'll be common across the industry. So all of the precautions that would need to be in place before a ship enters port, and the coordination with port services and service providers ashore, they should be fairly common. Whether there'd be some certification along those lines, I may leave that to others. That might be a little bit of a difficult, thing to establish. But I understand the intent behind it. I mean, we're looking for some common frame of reference for everybody.
To add on to what Brian said, CLIA produced protocols or guidelines that they're sharing with their European partners, because the ships are going to be back in Europe quicker. We are reviewing it here internally to be able to share it with all Caribbean partners. So this way we have a stepping stone. In addition, we're working with CARICOM to be able to adapt protocols that are universal.
Thank you, Michelle. We have another question from Eugene Engelhardt. He says that we're new in this business and we're wondering how well prepared the ports of departure for the cruise lines and not only the protocols. He says this is a general questions and anyone can answer these questions. They're on the island of Curacao, Bonaire, and Aruba, and they were prepared, but we don't know about the cruise line departing from the main port. So basically asking how the main ports, the home ports are preparing to deal with COVID.
Well, I'm happy to take an initial stab at this, and then you know, I think others may have some views as well. I think it's going to be critical. Certainly, the departure ports in Florida are going to need to abide by the requirements established by the CDC. Same thing in San Juan, as well as local health authorities. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of influence by health authorities. And what does that mean? You know, how do we keep the ships safe and, you know, and sanitized? Procedures will be in place. There will be screening. Exactly what that looks like is hard to say right now. Again, the situation continues to evolve, but there'll be some form of screening, you know, to minimize to the maximum extent possible the likelihood of anybody bringing the virus on the ship. Probably can expect luggage to be sanitized before it goes on board ship. There'll be a number of protocols at the terminals that we would anticipate before, you know, a ship, you know, basically departs port. That should provide some assurance to the ports where the ship is going, you know, that there was a stringent set of protocols followed before the ship was even allowed to leave. But again, all of these things are still being formulated right now. It's a lot of thinking, a lot of exploration, a lot of experts that are being brought in, you know, top quality epidemiologists, public health officials that are advising the cruise industry, advising ports and terminals as to how we can make this as safe a system as we possibly can.
Thank you, Brian. Anybody who wants to take a peek at that question?
Yep, I can, Hernan. And as a destination, we can relate. It's a question that since the beginning we also asked ourselves, but it's a question that we feel a certain comfort with the support of FCCA in terms of they unite many of those destinations that are part of the organizations also of the cruise lines in order to have the same or at least those same protocols established in all the destinations in a cruise's itinerary, be from the port of call, from the home port, and the rest of all the other destinations. And they have been a key partner in all the efforts. And they have been very, very transparent on the new protocols that are expected that the cruise lines and other destinations also have to abide by, and how the conversations with the CDC, White House, and other agencies that are related are coming along. So it's something that I believe that all destinations have in their mind. Is the other destination have the same the same health and safety standards that we're establishing in our ports. So I believe that when it comes, we have to all come together. And as I said, FCCA has been key in this initiative. So we feel that establishing those same protocols in the other destinations, we can come back safer and stronger than ever. So at least from a destination standpoint, that's my my take into all of this. So I leave it to you once again, Hernan.
Thank you. We have some other questions that came via the chat area, so I'm going to go and take those as well. From Sean Beezer, he's a tour operator in Antigua, and his question is, how would we be able to conduct a tour with social distancing in a van that has a capacity of 7 passengers and a mini coach with a capacity of 29? Bear in mind that we're only able to take 20 passengers prior to COVID-19. So basically answering how they're going to be able to do tours, when we still have precautionary measures. You want to take that one, Alejandro? Or Nathan?
Yes, and that's the reason why in my presentation, I suggested that we need to get together. There needs to be discussions, there need to be planning between the private sector, stakeholders, and the ministries of health and governments and so forth. And then we can come up with, as Michelle mentioned early on, some form of commonality within the islands, within the countries, within the destinations. We need to come up with that. And the ideas that are coming up from, like Mr. Beezer there with the tour operations, those needs to be discussed with the governments so we can have a protocol or a guideline that's acceptable and understood by everyone so we can actually move forward with that. That's where I think it needs that collaboration. And there's some destinations, as I mentioned, that are doing it well or that can do it well, and we can learn from each other, but there needs to be that form of collaboration.
In addition, I think that we need to learn what restaurants are doing. I mean, they're sitting people in groups, so families will be able to travel together. If they have masks, that's another avenue. Look what's happening in airlines. Airlines are still selling the middle seat to strangers. So how can we adapt policies that are working? That's all part of what we're working on, that CLIA is working on with CDC. Am I right, Brian?
Yes, yeah, exactly. CDC is we've had more interaction with CDC in the last couple months, I think, than ever before. And they have an enormous amount of influence over how we're going to operate, not only our industry in cruising, but the tourism industry overall.
Thank you, Brian. Anybody else wants to take a crack at that question? We'll continue to the next one. From Denise Linfad, welcome, Denise. How can we all work together with our respective governments to understand the need for seafarers who serve on vessels to be considered essential workers so they can be rotated and changed during pandemics, etc.? That's an open question to all the panelists.
Well, I'll start. I'm happy to start on that one, and hopefully others have views as well. I'm really grateful for the question, quite honestly. We do view all seafarers as essential workers. That is the view of the IMO. That's certainly our view from within the maritime industry. Unfortunately, they have not been treated as such. In our view, that really needs to change. Unfortunately, seafarers are often out of sight, out of mind. They're what keeps the world economy moving. In our industry, they make vacation experiences possible. And just to make sure everyone understands, what do we mean by a seafarer? Anybody who works on a cruise ship is considered a seafarer under the Maritime Labor Convention. There shouldn't be any differentiation between the type of ship that somebody works on. They're all seafarers. They're all entitled to be treated as key workers, to be given the rights and privileges under the Maritime Labor Convention. That's pay, repatriation, access to medical care ashore, all of this. It's not, these are not idle rights. I mean, these are enshrined in international instruments, such as the International Health Regulations under the World Health Organization, the International Labor Organization, and the IMO. So there's a lot of protections. Unfortunately, they're all enforced through member states that sign on to these treaties. And I'm sad to say many member states have not lived up to their obligations. So we've been very active with other trade associations, such as the International Chamber of Shipping. We're looking at some more in-depth discussions with the International Transport Workers Federation, ITF, all along these lines. But it's very concerning to the entire maritime industry, the way seafarers have been treated.
To add to that, the FCCA takes this very personal because over the last, especially the last year and a half, we have worked diligently to ensure that our Caribbean brothers and sisters are given first priority to be hired. I'm going to turn this over to Adam so he could just give you a little bit of an overview of what we've been working on to be able to have more and more people employed from the Caribbean. Adam?
Thank you, Michelle. Over the past, I would even say longer, it's probably 4 years, we put together a program for hiring from all the FCCA member destinations. And it took a while. We worked on a lot of different avenues to get this done. And then we went with it was pushed by Royal Caribbean, who was a big hirer.
Oh, I think we lost Adam.
Yep, we lost Adam. Let me just text him. It's a communication problem. I think we lost Adam again. Hold on. Let's give it a few seconds just to make sure it comes back. Otherwise, we'll have to continue. Oh, yes. There you are.
Sorry about that. We lost the internet here.
Yeah, we lost it
I guess.
for a few
Well,
seconds.
I don't think we paid the bill, to be honest. So let me go back to what I was saying before. Is that we had an employment committee that we set up, and it was many years ago, and we worked with the different destinations, and it was one of the hottest topics that we had around the Caribbean is employment. And then I have to tell you that I know Michelle took it this way, and I took it this way, and we took it personal that we've had and pushed for employment around the Caribbean and work with our member cruise lines to even push for more employment, and then to have this seafarers issue where we can't get these people home. I know we took it personal. It's putting so much time and effort into the situation, and then for this to happen, it kind of makes us go back to the drawing board on how this employment guide and employment with destinations is going to work. Michelle?
I think you said it pretty well, but we were very successful. We looked at models that work. I mean, we put a lot of time and effort in this to be able to give a blueprint out to our destination partners of exactly what needed to be done. As Adam said, we pushed the cruise lines, and then to have this happen, there's a responsibility. You don't assume something is just going to be a one-way street. When you want the cruise lines to employ from your country, then you have to ensure that you're going to work with the cruise lines if there's something that transpires, whether it's a medical emergency, whether it's getting the crew back home, whatever it is. We're partners in this or we're not partners in this.
Thank you, Michelle. Does anybody else have any comments? We don't have any more questions. We really like to thank all the participants for the questions and all the panelists for their answers. This has been an eye-opening of everything that we're doing, and we need to continue doing to continue to cooperate, like Nathan said, and become real partners. So at this point, I'm gonna leave my mentor, Fernando Rivera, to do our vote of thanks and closing comments for this wonderful webinar. Fernando. You need to unmute. Fernando, you need to unmute. Fernando, we can't hear you. You need to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Really, it's a pleasure to have all good friends like Brian, Michelle, Adam, and Nathan, with and Alejandro, which I have known for the last couple of years. There are two things that I want to mention that probably is the key to what we did today, and is partnership between Association like CSA, CLIA, CSA. We have the same goals, and we have to go in one route. We have to hold hands, work together for the benefit of the cruise industry. And also, it's the destination. The destination, they have to share what they're doing. For instance, things that Alejandro is doing in Puerto Rico, other islands in the Caribbean should know what you're doing so they can learn from that, and vice versa. You know, there's no way we can have success, a cruise industry, just one person. We have to be together, and we have to let all the destinations that probably doesn't have the resources that Puerto Rico have to help them out to get their goals and be a profitable destination. Again, thank you so much. I'm very happy. I think it came out much better than I was expecting, and we had excellent participation. So thanks again, and looking forward to see you all in October. And remember, CSA will be always available to CLIA and the FCCA. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you, everybody. Until the next webinar, we'll let you know. Thank you, Milaika, and be safe.
Thank you. Take care all.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.